Hey everyone, Russ Hamilton here, and welcome to another edition of On the Line. I really love that title because I think it encapsulates so much of what we do in corrections, on the line, putting our lives and safety on the line to safeguard that of the public, and also, that literal line that we form between the public and between those that are incarcerated that are deemed too dangerous to let out there. So I think, that's just a fantastic thing for Guardian RFID to have picked for this ongoing series of videos. Anyway, the subject that I really wanted to get at in this particular video is that of distance, right? And so distance is our friend. Distance is that thing which allows us to live longer lives, especially when there's so risk at what we do in corrections. So anyway, whether you want to, call it tactical distancing, or if you want to call it the reactionary gap, like my friend Steve Larson does, there's a lot of good reasons to pay attention to this. And it's one of those things, well, yeah, you can mention it and, talk about it and stuff, but unless you really inculcate it into what you do on a day-to-day basis, you're going to fail at it. And when you fail at it, you place yourselves and those other staff members around you in potential jeopardy. So what I've got going here and what I really want you to think about is just how that comes into play. Now, in just a little bit further on in this video, I'm going to show a couple of clips. And I really want everyone to understand that in those clips, I'm not trying to pick on or be overly harsh with what the staff did in these particular situations. It's one of those things that it's very nuanced, and it's very easy for us to get sidetracked in a way that pulls us into a little bit of complacency with regards to where our distancing is. But there's things that you should always be thinking about. Anytime an inmate is within that area where he can strike you or kick you or particularly maybe sucker punch you, you have to pay close attention. You always want to be, especially when you're addressing these inmates and so forth, is to be in a position where you have them at hopefully a tactical disadvantage, and that you're able to respond. That little quarter of a second, that you might be able to save might save your life. And it'll certainly give you the chance to, come out ahead as things go. Just a couple of things to think about is, make sure, first of all, that you've got as much distance as possible. If you're taking someone into custody, you might have to be talking to them and giving them orders. You always want to have that chance, before that even starts to, try and pull out what your tool is, whether it's going to be a baton or whether it's going to be some OC, making that radio transmission, making them know that you've been heard, those kind of things. Then the next thing that you always want to be cognizant of is, have that little bit of a bladed stance so that if something does start to happen, that you can get that foot back behind you, that you can get that base, that you're not going to be bowled over. And I'm not going to go too much more into the tactical of that, but it's things that you need to keep in mind. Also, be aware of where your hands are. Try and keep them up so that, you're talking to them, you're explaining things to them. Talk with your hands a little bit because it gives you an excuse and a reason to keep them up there so you can block, parry, punch, do whatever you need to do. All right. So having said all that, I'm going to go into a little bit of a couple of my experiences with this. Or really, in this case, I'm going to pick one out. And that one particular time, there's no way to ever forget this, is that I was talking to an inmate and, I had good distance on him, but this didn't even come into play in this particular circumstance because out of the corner of my eye, I see an inmate walking toward me. And as he starts to walk toward me and I start to turn, and to engage him and put myself in a better position, he just closes the distance and sucker punches me, right? I'm able to turn it around, get things onto the ground, take him into a little bit of a side control. And, I was none the worse for wear, but I could have been, right? I would have been in a better position if I had, immediately given him an order, if I had stepped back, if I had, tried to make sure that I had a better reactionary gap, that I had better tactical distancing. All right. Now, as I said before, I don't want to come off as being, overbearing on whoever it is that are in these particular videos. It's real easy, on a day-to-day basis, you have thousands of interactions with inmates and nothing happens, maybe for a long time. Maybe, in particular scenarios that you're usually involved in, there's always something that alerts you first. And so you have a chance to, check yourself, adjust, adapt, overcome whatever it is. But maybe on this one day, that doesn't happen. Someone does decide to sucker punch you. Someone decides to close that gap, close that distance before you have a chance to react. So that's where we get into the mindset of complacency, right? And so complacency, I have a little saying for it. Complacency is situational awareness perceived, but not achieved. And all that really means is that you think that you are being tactical, you think that you're being aware, and yet as those things go on and we get into that, that rut, that mindset that just kind of like, oh, nothing's going to happen, or I'm daydreaming and thinking about other things, later today, I can't wait to get off work because I'm going to do X, Y, and Z. And, we've laid that situational awareness aside and we don't even know it. So in this particular case, I want you to watch this video and you're going to see, I'm not going to narrate through it because I just want you to look at it and understand, but I'm going to tell you real quick of the things to look at real quick in it. And that is that the inmate, he's been talking to these officers. They have no reason to think that anything in particular is up. And as he starts to walk away, he kind of hesitates and he waits for them to close that gap just a little bit. And when that gap is closed to the point where he's within striking distance, he turns and sucker punches that officer. All right. The officer had started to come toward him. And then at that moment, he got hit. Now, this officer, probably has these kind of, not the sucker punch part, but the part where he has, interactions with inmates on a day-to-day basis. And maybe, I don't know for sure because I don't know who this individual is, maybe he just got that little bit of complacency to have a gap that wasn't reactionary enough for him to be able to block, parry, counterpunch, whatever it is in this particular circumstance. So anyway, watch and you'll see, and I'll pick up with my narrative on the other end of this video. All right, and we're back. So I guess you guys saw that, and this is a kind of a typical thing. I've seen a lot of videos like this, and you just have to understand that that officer would have been a lot better off if he'd been paying attention to that reactionary gap, to that tactical distancing. All right, so let's go on and let's look at this other one real quick. This video is a little bit different, but there's a part of it that's exactly the same, and I want you guys to see if you spot it. I'm going to run through it real quick before I go on because I don't want a voiceover in the middle of this thing. I just want you guys paying attention to it. All right. And in this case, an officer has come up to a door. The inmate who's inside is wearing what, some kind of smock. So I'm guessing that he's on suicide watch. And as the officer opens the door to hand him something, he bridges between the door and between the wall and puts himself in a position where he's ready to either move forward or possibly, and this is what I think was going on, I think he was trying to get that officer into a position where he could swing that door on him. This, unfortunately, was a swinging door type rather than the sliding kind. And you're going to see that he lures the officer to within distance, because as the officer begins to hand him, I think it's a food item like some cookies or something, you'll see that he pulls his hand back and makes just that much difference in how close he is before he attacks the officer. And so that being said, this officer, right, probably, hands out these things to inmates all the time, watches them, on suicide watch here and there. And instead of having this individual go over and, be against the back wall or sitting down on the bench that's off to the side there, he just goes in there and, not thinking, puts himself in a position where he can be attacked. So go ahead, watch this. And we're back. So as you can see there, it would have been much easier for this officer to, gain compliance, tell that guy to go to the back wall, go to the bench or whatever. And instead we ended up with a serious incident. So all of these things are great to point out. These are the kind of, little videos that are great to teach people and stuff. But just to put the video out there isn't enough, because you need something in your tool bag that's going to cement this stuff in your mind. You have to do more than just look at a video and go, okay, cool, man, I've been looking at the video, so I'm good to go out there. No, you're not, right? It's time to get rid of bad habits and to inculcate new good habits into what we're doing. All these times, you'll hear officers all the time, man, I can't sit with my back to the door in a restaurant. Okay. But you'll go out there and you'll stand face to face with an inmate, or you'll let them approach, all the way up to you almost, right? It's time for you to put yourself into that position of advantage where inmates know body language too. Hey, hold up. That's close enough. We can talk from here. Get your hands up, talk with your hands a little bit, blade your stance a little bit, and make sure that each and every day you do the same damn thing every time, right? Because that's what you want to do. You want to keep inmates at a distance, watch where you're going. If you have to travel around them, if you're traveling down the track on the yard or whatever, be looking over your shoulder, checking your six. Make sure maybe that a tower is watching you go across that yard, so that if something starts to happen, you can get on it a little bit faster. These are the things that we have to do in order to remain safe, in order to do tactical distancing, not for, 10 minutes out of the day, but for, solid 8 hours. Or if you're pulling a double, for a solid 16 hours. So be thinking about where you are, what you're doing, and where everybody else is in relation to you. Inmates, they'll do that all the time, where you'll see that they'll just see how close that they can creep up, talking to you, taking a step closer. They're testing you. So be cognizant of the tests that they're running on you, and think through that situational awareness, right? Put yourself in the position that if you were going to attack you, what would you do? Because this might be the thing that gives you that quarter of a second that actually saves your lives. So anyway, this is Russ Hamilton. I'm signing off. Everyone out there, stay safe.